Sales of electric vehicles in Ireland, they're not exactly through the roof. In fact, up to the 31st of July 2020, we're at about 4%. It's growing all the time, especially year on year. And there's some companies like Kia that have got some really great full-on EV solutions. But if you're watching this and you're just not sure and you're just, I don't know, electric, is it for me? What about a plug-in hybrid, a PHEV? And that's what this is, the Kia XCeed PHEV. It'll give you an electric range of 50 kilometers, but it'll still do over 700 kilometers in total with a tank of petrol in the boot, which means it makes things a little bit less nervy for those of you who just don't know, is electric for me or not? With the e-Soul and e-Niro from Kia, they have decent experience now with making electric vehicles. So if you stick a battery in the boot of an XCeed, what do you get? This car is up to 300 kilos heavier than the rest of the XCeed range, which is like carrying 3 rugby players in the boot at all times. More about that a bit later on in the video, but for now, let's check out the boot and see what it's like. Two exhausts either side, and they are for show, but that diffuser around the back, I think, just contrasts with the colours on the car. You're not going to notice it on silver, but on this grey you do. Down here there's places to store your granny cable, and if you took that out and put in your normal cable, you'd probably fit that in as well. It is compromised though because of the battery, so it's not as deep as it should be. However, for a hatchback, it's okay. You'll get a child's buggy in it, maybe a changing bag. With 2 kids and all their stuff, you may have to put some stuff into the floor in the back, which actually kind of works. One of the benefits of having an electric vehicle means you generally don't get a transmission tunnel back here. And Kia have adopted that approach in the XCeed PHEV, which means your middle passengers have got more legroom, but also, as I needed to do at the weekend, a child's scooter had to go here because it wouldn't fit in the boot. And I was able to just put it there. It wasn't sticking up at an angle because there's no tunnel, and everyone in the back was still happy. And if you're a parent, you know how much that's worth when you're trying to go on a long journey. Everything else is XCeed as you'd expect in the back, including an armrest with areas for drinks, 2 ISOFIX seats which have little flaps that tuck in and don't get lost because they're attached to the actual seat. You get some air vents back here, but as with so many Kias, there's no charging in the back of the car. What's that about? There's pockets at the back of both driver and passenger seats. There's also some areas for storing drinks in the back. They're not massive, but they'll do. Charging is pretty easy actually. It takes about 4 hours to do this on a wall box at home. The only real obvious difference, there isn't even a badge in the back that says this is a hybrid. You plug it in and that gets you 50 kilometers of pure electric range in about 4 hours. When I say faster charging, terms and conditions apply because it'll still only do 3.5 kilowatts, which is the same speed as a plug in your wall. It is much safer, however, to have your car charging on some sort of a wall box instead of a 3-pin plug. It's just safer all around. Cables, risk of fire, and this car will give you the option of getting up to 50% off your outdoor charger if you buy one, and then also you'll get the SEAI grants off the price of the car too, which falls in at just under €29,000 in total when you apply those grants. So what are we thinking on the looks? Hatchbacks, they're still there. There's still quite a few brands making them. You've got the Leon this year and the new Golf, of course, on the market too. But I think Kia are making a pretty good looking hatchback here, to be fair to them. Now let's check up front before we go for a spin, and more about those rugby players at the back then. There's no getting away from the fact that it's a little bit dark in here, even with this brighter roof headlining. It still would really benefit from a lift of a sunroof. There's clever things in here. So from their EVs, they've brought some things into this PHEV, including a button that just has driver only air conditioning on, which means this side of the car, if there's no one in this seat, you're just wasting battery. Now you can hear the car start up there. That means the engine is cold, and it will probably run for a couple of minutes till it gets it up to optimized temperature, and then will shut down. And seamlessly is how it works. You've got an automatic setting which will change the car from PHEV, full electric, just petrol, and you really don't notice it switching. In fact, I've just left it in automatic for the majority of my week driving the car. Everything else is as you were in the range. So you get this quite large tablet that's sitting in the middle of the car, and there's the engine just shutting off now, so it doesn't need any assistance. I have that range of about 49 kilometers now, and it's a touch screen. It will let you set up charging times that you can do it automatically for your car when it's plugged in. You don't need to worry about it. It'll give you information such as energy flow and tell you how economical the car has been on your previous journeys, which is really incredible, and I'll tell you that when we go for a drive in a second. The armrest has got decent amount of storage under here. There's 2 cup holders which will take pretty much your standard cups of coffee and bottles and things like that, and you get an electric handbrake down here. This gear shifter, it is quite chunky. I like it though. It's got a big button for release the pin for putting it into drive mode. The good thing about it is it's not a CVT style gearbox, so it's a lot smoother, although there's a couple of occasions where the car will sound a little bit harsh. And then your colour display is very clear and easy to use. However, the XCeed petrol I had last year towards the end of 2019 had these beautiful digital displays, and in this car we're back to needles, and I'm just wondering exactly why, Kia. Why have you done that? Options here for charging your phone in this model. You just pop it in there and the phone starts charging away. In here you get 2 options for your USB charging. One which will power the CarPlay or Android, and then you have a separate 12 volt. Again, quite an abundance of charging options up the front, but just why none in the back? Let's go for a drive and let me explain what those rugby players in the back do to the handling of the car. So get used to that Kia jingle, because it's going to start up every time you start the car. You can probably hear that chime. That's to let you know you're outside. No, it's to let people know that you're approaching in a car that, you know, could knock them over and all that stuff. When you're in electric mode, as you can probably imagine, it's really quiet and really smooth, and it's only when you really bury the accelerator that you'll get any sort of petrol engine kicking in. As long as you keep it nice and relaxed, the energy flow stays electric, and you use up your 50 kilometers as you please. Here's the thing. The battery has added quite a bit of weight to this car, and what was a pretty well performing, reasonably well handling hatchback has turned into, well, a bit of a lard arse. So it's just a little bit sluggish. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour takes over 11 seconds, and by anybody's standard, and particularly in a hatchback, that is quite slow. You also kind of feel that when you put your boot down, it's a gradual increase in power. So that burst that you might be expecting from something that has a battery in it just isn't there. Having said all of that, the economy of the XCeed is truly phenomenal. If you do charge this car every day for about €2 at home, and that's worst case scenario, if you shop around you'll get your electricity cheaper, it really means that the petrol needle doesn't have to move all that often. And I would imagine, depending obviously on the distances you drive, but you're really going to be in a car that just rarely needs to visit the petrol station. 0.1 of a litre of fuel per 100 kilometers is used in this car over the last few days for me. Worst case scenario, and that's with all kinds of driving, and this car, which is just over 2,500 kilometers on it, it's 4 litres per 100 kilometers in a 1.6 petrol automatic. And this car comes pretty well packed. You don't get blind spot in the mirrors, which is a bit of a letdown, but lane keep assist, frontal collision, and a few other bits and bobs like the reversing camera are all included. You will be able to run this car for about €4 for every 100 kilometers you do. It is a true 50-kilometer range. You'll pretty much get that out of it. And as I said, it's such a cheap way then to get around. There's no regen braking in the XCeed PHEV. I'm not quite sure why that is. It seems like you would be able to recoup a little bit of energy back into the car if it had it. Certainly other cars, other PHEVs, regen braking does come with them. And again, based on the e-Soul and the e-Niro, there's two paddles here for putting different levels of regen back into the car. So why not in the XCeed? I'm not sure. And if you're nervous about whether you'll get stuck at the side of the road in Donegal, you'll have that backup plan of about 700 kilometers worth of petrol stored in the tank down the back. So there really is nothing to worry about in terms of range, but you will save a lot of money driving this car on a day-to-day basis, provided you're religious about charging it every night, charging when you get to work, whatever your charging options need to be. Then you're going to have a car that really is truly very, very economical. And that's the bit that the XCeed PHEV gets so right. Total power with battery and petrol engine is a combined 140 brake horsepower. When that battery runs out after 50 kilometers, you'll just have a petrol engine, a 1.6 petrol engine, pushing out just over 100 brake horsepower. Sometimes revving it then gets a little bit loud, but if your driving is less than 50 kilometers per journey and you have a charging option at the other end of it before you return back, then you're not even going to have to worry about that. It really is just not going to be an issue. So if you've got a comment or question, what do you think of the XCeed? Would you prefer the gold one I reviewed in petrol performance earlier on in the channel? The video link to it is up here right now. And thank you very much for watching. There's ways to support the channel below, and we'll see you very soon.